series of debates.
I get a good one. What's your favorite color? What's it?
Got a 3-minute response to
What
that.
can't you do?
So we're going to be watching.
They're already used to debating. They want to do more.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Well, you know, we can always get together at Center Lake then.
Great.
There.
I'll be at 2 fools, actually. To try to be.
All right, so Joseph, how as GPSA president would you work to include departments or programs that are not traditionally involved in GPSA?
Okay. I think that sounds almost identical from a question I think from earlier this week. I think that this is a vital issue to GPSA. I think that GPSA needs to be more representative, and I think the idea, the structure, at least initially, how GPSA has been set up and what we continue to do is that GPSA revolves around these departments for graduate and professional students. These RDSAs are supposed to send representatives and be a collective voice for graduate and professional students. And I think that the number of people that can be represented in the organization through the GPSA Council and the diversity of groups, whether from different backgrounds and all, of course, their different ideas in general as a diverse community at UNM, is absolutely vital. And I think that that's one of the main things that I want to help fix with GPSA, because I feel like it's been so long since there's been a council that has been diverse enough as far as representing all of, or not even all, but even most or majority of RDSAs on campus. And I think that having that dialogue is absolutely necessary, and working with departments on campus is something that GPSA needs to do, and I think as president they can help facilitate that and work with the council chair. And I don't know if you meant departments as far as student departments, but also departments, I'll take it into a bigger perspective, but departments, other departments within the university, the academic community in general, is absolutely necessary too, because I think it's the same idea of making sure that there's facilitation for communication within GPSA that I feel like in the past has been lacking a lot, and I feel as president, it's the president's role to be more open to listening to more opinions, because we've seen it in the past that GPSA has left out groups, and groups feel left out, whether or not it's GPSA's fault as an organization or not. And I think more needs to be done to address that and minimize that as much as possible in the future.
But yeah, the question did ask for both departments and programs. So
okay.
Katie.
So I think one of the longest and least often walked distances on campus is between the sub and the GPSA office and Mesa Vista Hall. And I think that one of my priorities will be to make sure that I am visible if I were to be elected in this space, and also hold meetings of GPSA here in the foyer, in El Centro de la Raza's conference room, anywhere in Mesa Vista Hall, so that there is a connection between the leaders of the student organizations around campus, and that we know what we're each trying to accomplish, because I think that we have a lot in common. And I think that that's true, I mean, with regard to GPSA and, say, you know, BGPSA or SNAGS or RGSA. I think that one of the things that I would like to do if I were to be elected is to make sure that my executive board as president, I wouldn't have any control over the council and its representation. But as president, what I can promise is that my executive board will be representative of departments across campus, schools across campus, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different racial and ethnic backgrounds, different sexual orientations. I want to make sure that the voices are heard around the table, not just that there's a seat there, but that everyone feels as if they have a representative and are included in the process. I want to make sure that the power of government is shared among the people. I don't feel as if that's my role as president to have all the power. I think it's about making sure that there's a coalition of people that are being listened to and whose concerns are being met. And I would certainly, want to continue GPSA's outreach to the other departments that I've started with the grants process. I want to continue to make sure that the law school doesn't feel like they need to secede, that they feel as if they are going to have the value that they are looking for out of GPSA. If they're investing in us, GPSA must return resources and advocacy to those departments. I want to do that with the medical school. I want to do that with Anderson. I think that there are plenty of examples around campus where groups have felt excluded. And as grants chair, I've deliberately tried to create opportunities and resources and make sure that there's a communication between those groups. And I think that one of my skills is to listen. Unfortunately, I've had to do a lot of talking in these debates. I would have preferred to hear from you guys. And I want to promise you that I'm going to be a listening president so that I hear your concerns and that we can turn that into actionable and deliverable results for graduate and professional students, because I care about student success, and nobody knows about student success better than the students themselves.
Alicia.
This is a very key question, which I think distinguishes our leadership styles. As I've said from the very beginning, this campaign is not about me. It's not my GPSA position. It's not my board. It's not my anything. This is about we. This is about the graduate students and myself. And so if there are departments and schools and programs that have not been included, what I have proposed to do is create a transition team for this administration. And that transition team is inclusive of the programs, the schools, the departments, the organizations. And I think that it's important that this team have a say as to how it is that we're going to go about together implementing the plan, whatever that plan is, so that we can identify what's going to be our common agenda for the year and our priorities for that year. But more importantly, how best we together as a team are going to execute it so that we can assure that the outcomes that we set aside for ourselves actually are met at the end of our term. I think that's really important. I think that just in staffing the position in the office, again, I would open up the process. I would ask and solicit for recommendations. And this has to come from the overall student body that's being represented by GPSA. It's really important that those processes not be looked upon. This position is not, again, it's not a grandstanding position. This position is to facilitate the processes to create the inclusion that we've been talking about. Everybody's been talking about and throwing out inclusion and access and all of the rhetoric, but no one has come up with how have we done the processes. I've done the processes. I've formed coalitions of multiple organizations, and we've come out with 2 or 3 priorities, and we've executed them, and guess what? We've instituted the policies, and we've created the funding streams to follow through on those. So it's very important that we put someone in there, and I know it will be me, that will be able to execute those plans and actually stay true and to the team effort that we set up, that we have said that is so very important, that has to happen in leadership. So it's having a vision, having the ideas, but also knowing what processes to institute in order to be able to create that inclusion. It takes a lot more than just being able to say that we've done it. It starts with how you view yourself in relationship to those that you will be working with in shared governance of GPSA.
You know, we've been asked a version of this question several times, and you know, my answer is kind of always along the same lines, in that it is just a question of leadership. You know, at the end of the day, I think that we can't sit back and ask ourselves, why are these departments not sending representatives to the organization, but rather, what is the organization doing, you know, or not doing, rather, that is really providing those people with that sense that they need to engage, that they need to be a part of the organization, that they feel that they're receiving something of value. So I think that from a substantive dimension, how I would go about really trying to increase the scope of involvement across campus is especially when it comes to the medical school and the College of Education. You know, there's a lot of legislation that happens every year that directly impacts those 2 institutions. And really keeping an eye out and working with people on the ground in those departments to really engage them in a discussion about how GPSA can be an effective advocate, and be their voice when state level decision makers are fundamentally making choices that for the medical school, will decide whether or not a specific program in that school exists next year through the RPSP process, and for the College of Education, whether or not their graduation requirements are going to be different and what their licensure requirements will look like once they graduate from our College of Education. So I think that's one tangible strategy that I would like to employ, if elected, on how to increase the scope of activity with the organization. And again, it goes back to this notion of being client-centered. It goes back to this notion of service, and it goes back to this notion that you are the salesperson of the organization and you're there to meet the needs of your clients. And it sounds like a simple idea, but it's a very challenging one, and it's one that I'm committed to really trying to live up to. And I'd just like to go back a minute to our previous question and just reassert for everybody, I think that diversity starts at home, and it's the leadership that you take, and that's how you lead by example. And like Katie, I would like to construct and help build an organization that's representative of this campus. I'm proud to be a Lobo. I'm proud to be a Hispanic student at this institution, and I'm proud to be an openly gay candidate at this institution. And I'm really, truly looking forward to engaging those different sectors, because we have a lot of work to do. And I mean, it's a really challenging time for us as a state and as an institution. And if we don't, as Patricia does say, translate this rhetoric into action, we're not going to get very far. And I disagree with her, though. I think that you have other candidates who can do that, and I think I'm one of them.
Right. Any final rebuttals?